Appreciate you coming on. It's great to get to chat with you. I think I got connected with you after the
It was Shalace's interview, I
yes,
think.
yes, that was her.
Yeah,
It's really cool to get to talk to like people that are high up, like in the sport of bodybuilding, because it just shows you like that these are just people. They're just willing to kind of go that extra mile, dedicate themselves, have all that discipline that they put on themselves and things like that. But they're just people like you and me.
I think we always, like, I'm not a competitor myself. I've never competed, but I train obviously a lot of competitors, and I think the impression you get as a non-competitor is that they're all robots, and I do use that analogy all the time, and I'm guilty for using it a lot. Because in a way, that they are robots. You can tell them what to do and they will do it. If you tell them to eat, I don't know, X amount of chicken, X amount of rice, whatever, they will eat exactly bang on that. If you tell them to do 3 sets of 10 with 200 pounds, whatever, they will do exactly that, which is a good thing and a bad thing. I think, especially from a social media perspective, we see that as well. Almost that kind of robot coming through, but exactly as you said, they're real humans, they're real people. They have the same thoughts, feelings as we do. They have the same thoughts and feelings. Some days when it comes to going to the gym, sometimes they have to drag themselves out of bed in the morning just to do that extra little bit of work. So it is always good, especially from your point of view, to get those interviews to actually get the person behind the body, rather than just see, that physique as it is.
I think it can be very like a physique like that can have like two effects on a person. It can either be like very inspirational or it can be very like I'll never be there, so why even try? But then I think whenever you get their story, it can add that layer of, oh, you know what, they have a kid or they have this crazy job or they have this other thing. And if they can do it, if they can look like that, what if I put in 10% or 20% of what they're doing? What can I possibly achieve?
Yeah, and like using Shalace as an example, because obviously you interviewed her a few weeks ago. She has a full-time job. She's a very busy, successful personal trainer. That is her. That's her bread and butter. That's how she earns a living. She's busy. She's great at what she does. And when you see people using the excuse, especially of, oh, well, fitness is your full time job, or going to the gym is your full time job, that's how you can look like that. Well, I'm sorry, but even at that level, she has a job. That's what pays the bills. Let's be honest, even at that level, women especially are not paid enough. Professional bodybuilders, physique athletes are not paid enough for it to be a full-time job, or to be able to pay their bills on. Only, if they're winning that Olympia title, are they getting a good amount to see them through the year? And same with people such as myself. I'm in okay shape. I'm not at that kind of level, nowhere near it. But I maintain an okay shape throughout the year. And when you get some coaches being like, oh, some of the best coaches in the world actually aren't in great shape because they're too busy coaching clients. I'm sorry, but it's absolute bullshit. I've got a jam-packed schedule of clients that I coach. That's my full-time job. My job isn't to be an influencer and train in the gym all the time. I've got a 1-year-old baby. I've got a busy job, busy lifestyle, etc. Sometimes I have to get up at 4 a.m. to get my own workouts done. If I want to get in some extra cardio, I might be squeezing it in at 9, 10 p.m. at night. It's that different mindset, isn't it? It's making the time because that is a priority for you. And I think that's the difference between athletes at that level, that, training for them, eating, hitting every single macronutrient on that day, ticking all those boxes. It's at the top of their priority list, to the extent that some people might call them selfish at points. But that's the reality. You have to be to reach that level. There are some sacrifices that you have to make.
Yeah. And it's interesting the stereotype of, you do hear that a lot where bodybuilders kind of have this stigma of like selfishness, but you would never hear that from like LeBron James, or about LeBron James or about Tom Brady or about, some very successful athletes in other sports, because it's seen, I think, as more of like what's the word here? I don't think legitimate's the right word, but I think it's seen as more of like a legitimate sport, a legitimate career, whereas bodybuilding's seen more as like this. It's not a traditional route. It's seen as all of these other things. So it's just weird to me that like bodybuilders get this certain stigma, this certain tag put on them, whereas other athletes who are you maybe you could even say like they're spending so much more time, so much more money on, so much more time maybe away from their families, and they don't get that same negative tag put on them.
Exactly. I think bodybuilders as well, from outsiders looking in, they're going to see a lot of that vanity aspect to it as well. So that I think they automatically associate that vanity with being selfish anyway. Whereas, exactly as you say, let's say you're a pro basketball player, the amount of time you're spending away from your family because you're flying out to wherever, every single week, or you're doing training camps or whatever for long periods of time. But as you say, if you're a pro bodybuilder, you're seen as being selfish just because your life revolves around going to the gym. And let's be honest, even at the elite level, they're not needing to go to the gym for hours and hours and hours and hours every day. The best are still probably only going to the gym for an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours tops. Cardio may be on top of that. They're obviously tracking their macronutrients, their protein, fats, carbs, very kind of very anally, making sure they're hitting every single number on that. And obviously there's got to be a case of your partner being very understanding of that when it comes to eating together as well and trying to eat similar foods. But again, we go back to that pro basketball player. Well, at that top level, they're going to be having a nutritionist. The nutritionist is telling them what to eat. So therefore, the partners have to kind of appreciate that and eat in a similar way to that as well. They're going to be doing gym sessions. They're going to be doing, the actual sports sessions, on the court sessions, etc. All their skills based sessions as well. But exactly as we say, it's just seen as being quite vain, just because it's let's be honest, it's about getting on stage with not a lot on.
Yeah, yeah, very true. And it's funny when you mention like that they're very like in a way robotic and they'll do whatever kind of it takes or whatever their coach says. Hey, this is what you got to do to succeed. I was actually can't remember who it was, but I was talking to somebody and they were like, "I'll do whatever it takes. I'll eat worms." And it's like, you know what? Like people will literally do anything to reach that level of success because in a sport like bodybuilding too, it's weird because everybody is kind of doing the same thing in a way. We're all, I mean, I'm not saying we're all because I don't actually bodybuild either, but everybody's like going to the gym, training, worrying about what they eat, recovery, body work, all these different things. Like you could be doing that from your very first show, or you could be doing that at the Olympia level. And I think that's why you do have people who say, I'll do whatever it takes.
It's literally at that level. It's literally looking for those 1%. How can I get an extra 1% out of this? How can I get an extra 1% out of the supplementation that I'm using, or how I'm performing this exercise, or the type of exercises that I'm using, and optimizing within that, because all those 1% obviously at the end of the day all add up. um I'll give you an example. Shalace leading up to the Olympia, especially, we were we were very kind of aware of certain things that might be picked up on. The shape of her glutes, which is largely genetic anyway, but certain things, and always just really trying to um own in on those things and just really try and work on just those small areas. If one side glute was a little bit stronger than the other, then we obviously would work a little bit more on that weakness, but really just the absolute details of things. Whereas in the off season, like we're in now, we can afford to, I suppose, work on more of a macro level and just kind of, build those foundations up just from a general level, and try and, pack on some size whilst kind of staying relatively lean. But especially the closer you get to competition, you are really just being super, super, super picky about, how we can manipulate just the tiniest of things just to come in just that little bit tighter in that area, or just that little bit fuller in that area. How can we get our our delts to really pop on the day? Is it just a case of having big delts, or is it just a case, or is it also a case of, okay, can we do some exercises to help mimic that position where you're posing and showing off your delts? So it's not just a case of, exercises selected to build your delts. It's about selecting exercises that will kind of get you and mimic those positions that you are actually going to be posing in, so you can really actually show off your shoulders as well, almost like posing practice within the workouts per se. So it's those tiny little details that do all add up. And that's why, especially competitors, and I work with a lot of magazine cover models and things like that. They do come to me for mostly for the training aspect. I'm known as kind of a training guy, and it's to get those little, those 1%. How can we make this a little bit better? If I'll give you an example. Hack squats, for example, are a very, very common exercise, for some reason used a lot at the moment by bodybuilders, almost taking over back squats. Back squats were kind of in the 1980s, 1990s. Arnold especially helped kind of bring that in from a bodybuilding perspective. But now hack squats seem to be the thing, reverse band hack squats. So you might have 80% of physique athletes using a hack squat at the moment, but how can, let's say we use it, how can we get that 1-2% extra out of that hack squat? What minor changes in technique can we use? What kind of set rep schemes? What can we monitor to know that you are actually making improvements in that, versus just stalling with that? And it really is kind of just making those tiny kind of 1%ers with everything. Even if your program looks the exact same as someone else's, how can we just get that extra little bit out of it?
Yeah. And it reminds me, I was actually looking through your content and watching some videos, and one of the hip thrust things that you did, it was like positioning your feet, and like how having them a little bit too far out versus maybe a little bit too far in, targets a little bit different area.
Yeah.
And I think people generally know, like, okay, shoulder press does this, hip thrust does this, bench press does this, but like what you're talking about, how you set your hands up, how you set your feet up, how you set, how you're bracing, or how you're, initially setting up that muscle, like all those different little tiny little things that the average gym goer, or even somebody that hasn't been in bodybuilding for a while, doesn't think about. And it's just like, oh, if I do a bench press, it's going to build my chest, or if I do a shoulder press, it's going to build my shoulders. But how am I building certain parts of the chest, or how am I maybe actually, doing a bench press and I'm not targeting my chest as much as I think I am? Or maybe if I'm doing this bicep curl, how am I actually targeting it in a different way to where I could be doing it and getting more benefit from this? So it's like, yeah, that 1%, that little setup difference, that little form or technique difference, it's so crazy how that can actually, you can think you're working one thing, but you're actually maybe doing a completely different thing than what you're aiming for.
Yeah, completely. Look, from a social media perspective, we know how social media works. How you coach someone and the exercises you prescribe aren't necessarily what it might look like on social media, because let's be honest, what works on social media and gets views is weird stuff sometimes. It's thumb stopping content. So a lot of the stuff I'm putting on social media tends to be like, the stuff you might sprinkle in your workouts at the back end of workouts, your finishes, little things like that. I'm just thinking, look, what's interesting, what's going to help someone out, what's going to give them that little 1%. And a lot of what I share is not gonna, I'll be honest, it's not gonna be what your beginners are gonna find use in. I might have some beginner people follow what I do and share some content, which is great. And if they can find some value in that, absolutely fantastic. But they're the type of people that should be focusing on kind of the big nuggets of things, whereas I'm focusing on what are those small things we can do, what are those extra exercises that we can throw in to, I use the saying all the time, your meat and potatoes or your meat and vegetables exercises. That we all use similar meat and potatoes exercises, but what are those extra little exercises that we can kind of sprinkle into things? And as you say, the hip thrust video. How do we find the exact foot placement every single time? Here's a little trick to find the right foot placement. So we're actually isolating our glutes more rather than hitting our hamstrings a bit too much. Um, I'll give you another example, and I haven't done a post on this. I probably should, but in the bench press, okay, bench press is a common exercise for powerlifters, then which is where we get all of our content from, really, for bench press, and that's who we listen to for our bench press technique, because they're some of the strongest guys in the world. So you look straight to them for, how do I bench press? Okay, you're strong at the bench press. I'm going to look at you and emulate that. They're very kind of shoulder blades, scapulars retracted and back. They're kind of very extended through their back. They're in a very, very efficient position to lift as much load as they possibly can, which is excellent. Okay, that's really, really great for their sport. All right. From a physique perspective, we don't really care how much we're lifting. We obviously care over time. We want that progressive overload. We want to gradually, build up on that weight and apply stress in the right way. But we're looking to use the bench press as a tool to build muscle rather than to get stronger on the bench press as a sport. Now, arguably, if we're using the bench press as an exercise to build our chest, besides the fact, and this can be a different conversation, besides the fact that I don't actually think it's the best exercise to build your chest, we're going to be using it in a different way anyway. We're going to be executing it in a slightly different way. We're not going to be retracting our shoulder blades so much. We're not going to be really puffing out our chest and kind of getting our belly out and shortening the path in which the bar moves. We might even be putting our feet up on the bench press to limit kind of stress through the back and limit using our legs as much. And a lot of studies do actually show you get higher EMG, higher muscle activation in your pecs, putting your feet on the bench versus actually putting your feet on the floor. Whereas most people would look at that and be like, oh, they're bench pressing with their feet up. It's not correct. Why are they doing that? Why are they not arcing their back? Why are they letting their shoulder blades just lift up a little bit too much? But actually, from a physique building perspective, from a muscle building perspective, you can argue it be a better technique, even though you can't lift as much using that technique. So it's just those small tricks. I'm not saying that's the right way for everyone to bench press. There are some physique athletes that will build their chest better doing it in a slightly different way. But for some people, performing it in that way will be better than the traditional way that you see it performed in that very powerlifting-esque way of doing it, which is for the sport to lift as much weight as you possibly can.
And it's interesting you bring that up because another post I saw with Schlace was deadlifting, and it was like, hey, we don't have to deadlift from the floor just because that's how you might see it in a competition. We have a different goal. And another thing on that post too was using straps. It's like, okay, are we trying to build our strength in our forearms? And I think that's certainly something that you can do, and it's important for that muscle development. But for this particular exercise, let's focus on taking the load and putting it where we want to put it, and not necessarily focusing on the weight, not necessarily focusing on where we're starting, not necessarily focusing on all these other aspects that another sport may be, more inclined to focus on.
Yeah, and that's a really, really good example, actually. I'm glad you brought that one up. Just using that as an example, again, we're coming back to the sport of powerlifting. We look to the sport of powerlifting for how to deadlift off the floor, because the rules say you're deadlifting off the floor. The plates need to be touching the floor, need to be a certain size, the bar needs to be a certain weight, etc. On all these things. You're not allowed to use lifting straps and so on. And that obviously filters into mainstream fitness, where you see, Jack and Jill down the gym trying to deadlift off the floor. And what normally happens when a lot of people deadlift off the floor is that they hike their hips up early and then they start hanging off their back, and then they're working kind of their lumbar erectors and just gonna hanging off that fascia to lift that bar up, and it's just not good for their back. Whereas for some people, Shalace included, just elevating by maybe 6 inches off the floor, it just works with their anatomy better. So, if we were, for example, to take her to the floor, it would take her, it's not to say she can't do it. She can do it. She's got that range of motion, but it would take her a lot longer to recover from that than if it were to take her just 6 inches off the floor. So we're kind of getting the loading that we want. We're getting the type of stress that we want, but we're also thinking about the recovery, the kind of the neural fatigue from that exercise as well, and how that affects the rest of her training program. When it comes to using the lifting straps, at the end of the day, we're using the deadlift to build, her lower back strength, her glutes, and her hamstrings. That's why we're using that for her. We're not concerned with grip. If grip is a limiting factor in that exercise, which it is for Shillase, then we want to be using lifting straps. We're not using it, as I said, as a grip strength exercise or as an exercise to improve grip strength. Now, some functional people out there might be like, okay, well, she needs to get a stronger grip. She needs to improve that over time. You shouldn't lift more than what your grip can handle. Well, the problem with that is that, she's a physique athlete. We're trying to use that exercise we're using that exercise as a tool to build muscle. We can't afford 12 weeks or so of lifting subpar weights that her glutes, hamstrings, and backs can handle just because her grip can't handle that. What we do instead is we use that as a primary lift. And then later on in the workout, or even on a different day of the week, or even in another training phase, we're doing other exercises that will improve her grip strength. So, for example, she finished a training phase last week where within that we were doing hanging knee raises. You're using your full weight, we're hanging off the bar, and we're putting some load through that grip. We're challenging that grip in that exercise. If for some sets you're using some grip support with that, absolutely fine, because at the end of the day we're trying to put load through your abdominals. We're trying to load your abdominals, and that's the goal of the exercise, not grip strength. But still, as almost a secondary goal, there is an element of training your grip strength within that. Same with every single exercise on a pull workout. You're gripping a bar or a machine or a cable or something like that. We're training our grip anyway. We don't want to be fatiguing it anymore by doing deadlifts or whatever. It always boils down to asking yourself the question, what am I doing this exercise for? If you're doing RDLs because you want to get better at RDLs or you want to improve your strength in RDLs, then yeah, absolutely. If grip's a limiting factor, then that needs to be improved. And there are periods of time where if you're using that RDL primarily as a muscle builder, then yeah, you're still going to be trying to improve those weak points. Grip, for example, you're going to want to improve that. But generally speaking, if you always go back to that question of, well, what are we doing this for? Then you're going to get the answer of, how you're going to be improving that, what you should be doing. So, for example, if you want to be getting better at RDLs from a strength perspective, building that technique first, even if it means laying slightly off the load, not being able to, you might not be able to put maximum load through your glutes, hamstrings, lower back to start off with because your grip's the limiting factor. But just over time, if your grip's the limiting factor and you only go as heavy as your grip can handle, your grip automatically will improve over time until it catches up with your glutes and hamstrings.
It's really cool to kind of put the pieces together. I actually have I know you have your CSCS, correct?
Yeah, I've had that since I was about 21 years old. I think I've had that since.
Okay.
I've had that for years and kept it up since. I came up as a strength and conditioning coach. That's kind of my background, and thought I wanted to be a strength and conditioning coach. I work with a lot of elite football teams or soccer teams, if you want to call them that. A lot of professional rugby teams and players and things like that. Work with Olympic athletes. And that's kind of how I came up and did internships and things like that. And then just gradually over time, working with more and more people that, I always say, just want to look great naked. It's something I just enjoyed doing more rather than that team sport perspective and training athletes that are, just want to get faster and stronger. As much as I still dabble in that a little bit and still do have some athletes on my books. Most people that I train nowadays are, physique athletes, people that want to be in magazines, cover models, people that want, 12-week transformations, things like that. and people that are, I suppose, more your elite gym goer. I'm not training, Jack and Jill who haven't been to the gym in months and months, and let's be honest, probably just need to go out and do a 40-minute walk every day, just to just to get started. I'm training people that are already 3, 4, 5, 6 workouts a week, already nailing those, and just want to take things to the next level. But yeah, the CSCS, I've maintained it. I think it adds credibility in the industry. Guys like some physique coaches, elite bodybuilding coaches, like John Meadows, for example, the late John Meadows, he had his CSCS and maintained that throughout his career. I think it's an important one, just from a credibility standpoint, just to stay within that area a little bit. Got some had a paper a couple of months ago published in the Strength and Conditioning Journal that's run by the NSCA as well, which obviously gives good credibility if you've got your CSCS as well. So there's a lot to having that.
Yeah. I went through college with my bachelor's in exercise science, and my
Nice.
last course actually was that the NSCA's CSCS, that textbook they have, and then at the end of the year you could go and take the test if you wanted to. It was if it was actually paid for by the school if you had a certain
Well,
grade in the class. It was pretty cool. It was an interesting route that I thought I maybe would be interested in as well. I actually did an internship with a local high school here where I went, and we worked with football, basketball, baseball, volleyball, all kinds of teams, and it was a really good experience.
it's probably going to sound bad, but I'm quite controlling with things. I like to have a lot of control over things. So when it comes to, and I'm really, really, really big into the details, and getting those extra 1, 2% out of things, which works far better when you're working one on one with someone, even though most of what I do nowadays is online, to people anywhere in the world. I don't really do any in-person stuff anymore, but online, we're really going over form check videos and things like that every single week to make sure things are on point. If you're doing that in a team environment, exactly as you say, it's safety. One of the best things I ever heard from a strength and conditioning perspective was he was a manager of a soccer team. I won't say what soccer team, but at Premier level. And he basically said to me, look, your only job here is to make sure that at the weekend, they are still on the pitch. Okay. They are still playing. Basically, that they don't have any injuries. Okay. That's your only goal, is to keep them playing. And as soon as you hear that, you kind of understand exactly what your role is. Your role there is to basically bulletproof them, to injury proof them, and to keep them in shape throughout the season. By doing that, it's very, very hard to push things. It's very hard to make actual meaningful improvements in things. And that's why, especially within soccer, they see the off season as the time to do that. And same with any sport, they see the off season as a time to improve that. Now, different sports vary in that off season, but with soccer especially, that off season is very, very, very short. And actually, that off season is largely about playing a lot of games with different teams, testing out things and stuff like that. It's not an off season where it's like, okay, now you've got some proper gym time with people. We can make some real improvements with people. We can knock, I don't know, half a second off of their 60-meter time, whatever, within that period. We can get them a little bit more powerful, a little bit more explosive, because you got that limited time. So, throughout the year, your only goal really is to maintain, let's be honest. And the higher that they are, the more elite they are as an athlete, the more your job becomes about maintaining rather than actually making those improvements. In those lower levels, I actually personally enjoy training the lower levels a little bit more, and kind of those younger athletes where they had something to prove and they still want to be making those improvements, because they can afford at that age to take a little bit of a gamble, because that's what it's going to take to get to that next level, is that little gamble. And either it works or it doesn't. If it works, they're making a lot of money. If it doesn't, then what's the worst thing? So those slightly lower levels were almost slightly better to coach. But exactly as you say, when you've got, I used to sometimes have it where like I'd have five athletes, out on a pitch, five athletes in front of me, another five behind them. We're doing stuff with mini bands, getting our, glutes switched on, things like even just some basic warm up mobility, active movement stuff. And you're looking over there and they're completely off base, their joints are completely out of line. But over here, they're looking all over the place. You can only spread yourself so much, so it's very limited what you can achieve as part of an S&C coach in that kind of field setting. But so that was a relatively, that could have been a successful career for me, but I could have only got so far with it. But I found a lot more reward actually just working with physique athletes and where I could tick my own mental boxes of actually having that control and actually making some serious improvements with people.
Yeah, and actually, it reminds me of what you're talking about. It reminds me of Tim Grover, the trainer for used to be the trainer for Michael Jordan. I'm
Yeah,
rereading his book right now, and he was talking about when he first reached out to like all the,
it's intense, isn't it? That book. It's
yeah,
quite intense. Yeah,
yeah, it's really good. I really enjoy kind of, and it's short too. It's really something you can read really quickly, and it kind of like just realigns you, I guess. But he was talking about he sent letters to all the Bulls, and like Michael Jordan was the only one he didn't send a letter to because he was like, okay, I've never trained an athlete before. There's no way that the greatest athlete's going to want me to train him. But he was actually the only one that responded to him, and what he said was the kind of the same thing you said. Like during the season, they only trained when they didn't have a game or when nothing was going on. And in the NBA, there's 82 games. You got travel. You have all these different things. So what they actually did was kind of really weird at the time, probably maybe still weird now, but they trained actually on game days as well. And, because you didn't have enough time, you didn't have enough days in the week to actually make a real change during the season unless you were willing to do something crazy like that, basically, and extend the amount of times that you did train during the season. But yeah, that off season, I feel like is, it's the big thing for the sports. It's where you see, especially, and you were mentioning those lower levels. If you're looking at high school levels, like that's where, to me, the difference is between the people who are winning and the people who aren't winning is, are you in there? During the summer for football or
yeah,
whenever it is for your sport, are you in there lifting and, strength conditioning and really getting after it in the off season?
100%. And I don't know about you, but I do genuinely think that coaches at that lower level, more so strength and conditioning coaches at that slightly lower level, tend to be much higher skilled than those coaches that are paid more at the high level because they're used to seeing it all. They're used to solving some problems of a wide variety, a wide level of different athletes, and actually trying to make improvements and take that athlete to the next level. Whereas at the highest level, as I said, it's almost about maintenance, and it becomes almost more of an injury proofing role and making sure that they're just still available to play on the weekends or whenever. So I do see a lot higher skill base in coaches that are working at those medium to lower levels than I do the higher levels.
Yeah, I worked under a very, very intelligent, strength conditioning coach, and somebody who was always looking to improve on what they knew, looking at research,
Yeah,
taking new classes and new courses, and just learning even things that he couldn't necessarily like strictly apply to every athlete. Like if somebody came to him and they were like, hey, what can I do for this? It wasn't necessarily something that you might need as a strength conditioning coach or get certified through, but he would take those extra steps to maybe have a little piece of advice for somebody. It was really kind of inspiring to see, and like understanding if you want to be that good, sometimes you have to do what other people aren't doing realistically.
completely. I think it is very similar to. So I've been coaching people for in total about 16 years. And when I first started out, I was doing a lot of basically training anyone, really, training anyone down the road, anyone down the gym, whatever, whoever would pay you, basically, that they were the people that I was training. And within that, you obviously get a massive variety of people that you are training. So you could say that at that point, I was training, I was coaching at the lowest level because of, I would pick anyone up, okay? But the skill set that I developed by training people from a wide variety of, body types, ages, issues that they had, injuries and things like that was massive. And it helps me even to this day because I saw every single problem out there, whether it be an older lady with arthritis in their wrists to I used to train a gentleman who was a veteran and an amputee. He lost both of his legs. The challenge behind that and trying to train your hips when you don't have anything below your knees. That's a massive challenge. But as weird as it sounds, even that applies to some of the stuff that I do now. If someone, even some of my elite physique athletes, they have injuries. They have to, be away for months on end because they've had, one of my physique athletes in the last 2 years has had a total knee replacement, just as an example. So she's gone from being a elite level to total knee replacement, not being able to do a lot whatsoever, to we've got her back on stage again and at that elite level again. So just to be able to go through that journey with someone, because of past experience and understanding, how we might be able to adapt and exercise to, to suit you at this point is massively rewarding. But as I say, I think you pick up a lot by just training people, working with people, as a coach at those lower levels that you can transfer to those higher levels.
Being a trainer, being someone who works with people, and it sounds like, you're somebody who likes to kind of, like you said, work with those people who are more, well, not necessarily, but some could be short-term people, right? Like, this is what we want to achieve in this short amount of time for this specific goal. How do you kind of like, how do you take how do you take those things that you would apply over maybe years with a certain client and kind of fast track those things, and fast track also that relationship in a short amount of time with a short-term client?
Good question. So I think the reality is that most people want that quick fix. So, from we talk about it from a marketing standpoint, everyone wants to hear that they can get a 12-week transformation or a 90-day transformation. Okay. So you're from a coach, you're almost pressured to try to deliver that. Now, the reality of that is that yes, a lot of people can make some radical, changes to their physique in 12 weeks, 90 days. I don't know what's special about 12 weeks or 90 days. It just seems to be the thing, but 3 months you can make some big changes. But I think what you see in social media, in all kinds of media, are almost this super overweight, especially it tends to be a guy in their, middle-aged or 40 to 50-year-old who's gone from relatively chunky, borderline obese to six-pack abs in 12 weeks. That's not necessarily, it's 99% of the time, that's not actually reality. Everyone's just got a different level of what they can achieve in those 12 weeks. So I think, back to your question, from the get-go, it's about getting that realistic expectation across to them. Actually, having that conversation like what we're doing now over a Zoom call, that's how things start. What are you doing right now? What's your training history like? Where would you ideally like to be within 12 weeks? And then I can come back to them and be like, look, okay, this is what I think we can achieve in 12 weeks. You might get to exactly where you want, or you might fall a little bit short, or we could do a little bit better, whatever. But also in the long run, we do want to be achieving this as well. It's kind of getting that buy-in in terms of, trust. It's building that trust from the get-go, and just being honest with someone from the get-go. So rather than me being like, yay, we can get you six-pack abs in 12 weeks, we can get you super ripped, whatever. It's actually just from the start getting that buy-in, just by being a super honest person and being like, okay, we can achieve this in 12 weeks. This is exactly how we're going to do it. So it literally just starts from that first conversation, that first interview, whatever you want to do. Otherwise, what happens is if you start over promising, most of the time you're going to be under delivering on that anyway. And then halfway through that transformation process, their motivation is just going to take a massive dip. Whereas if from the get-go you give them that realistic expectation, we stay along that track. We make sure we're making those improvements week in, week out, we're ticking those boxes, we're staying on track, then that motivation is gonna stay there throughout. I do always say to people, well, look, I can lay it out for you. I can give you the exact boxes to tick. We can put your entire training schedule together. I can tell you exactly what to eat, what macronutrients to eat, how to track, whatever. We can do our check-ins. We do we do like weekly monitoring falls. We can monitor your sleep and things like that. I do as much as I possibly can to keep them on track. But at the end of the day, it's up to them to, put their keys in the car, get in that car and get to the gym, which we can't do our end. As much as we lay everything out for people as coaches, we can't be that person that takes that step to get to the gym. And that does happen. There are some people that have expectations that as a coach, you're going to every day be bugging them and, make sure you go to the gym, make sure you go to the gym. The trouble is, as much as I might be able to do that, there's only so much I can do to make that person that's struggling to go to the gym to actually get to the gym in the first place, because there's clearly something else there that's stopping them from doing that. As I say, if I get people, we talk about robots, back to the original conversation, that's what separates them, those elite physique athletes, in that those boxes that you're laying out for them, that path, that exact system that you're laying out for them, they will just do it. No questions asked. Rain come rain, shine. If they go out and I don't know, they've got a flat tire in their car in the morning, they will find a way to get to the gym no matter what. Whereas someone else might be like, what, flat tire, can't really get to the gym today. Your elite physique athlete will be like, what, let's get a cab, or let's see who else is going to the gym. Let's run to the gym, whatever. They will be going the extra mile to get there because that's a priority for them. It's just a different mindset.
Yeah. That's funny. Yeah, it's so weird, like psychologically, how it really comes down to like most people can do the actions that it takes.
Yeah.
But the separator isn't who can do it, who literally just does it. It's literally just who is willing to move their legs to get in the car, hit the gas pedal down. Like it's so simple, it's so basic if you really just look at it from like an actual, anatomical, what it takes to get to the gym and what you're doing and all those things. If you can almost like either program your mind, like you're saying, to become robotic, or just turn off your mind, like either way. But that mind sometimes is so crazy how it's that limiting factor, because in our heads, the same mind, we want the goal, we want the end goal, but something within that same program, same operating system, it's like it doesn't allow some people to do it. It just doesn't. It doesn't. It
It's
doesn't make sense to them.
I think that the easy way to kind of get this point across. Okay, let's forget the top 5% of physiques in the world. Let's say the top 5%, 1%, whatever. For 95% of the population to look great naked, to get the body that they perceive as being good for them, so they can look in the mirror and be like, what, I'm looking pretty darn good today. For them to get to that level, all they need to be doing is lift weights 3 to 5 times a week. Okay. Don't overthink it. Just go and lift some weights. Go out for a walk 40 minutes, 40-minute walk, brisk walk, maybe 3 to 5 days a week as well. More fork pushaways, okay, i.e., a little bit less food and less couch planks, okay, i.e., a little bit less time spent on the couch. That's all they need to be doing, okay, without even overthinking what you're doing within that. Don't even think about the types of weights that you lift in, what your workouts look like. Just get in the door and lift something, do it safely. Don't start, searching social media for the best exercises and the best way to eat and the optimum macronutrient split, whatever. These people are always searching for, what's the solution, what's the solution, what's the solution. Yet they're not doing the basics of lift 3 to 5 times a week, go out for a walk for 40 minutes, or so, 3 to 5 times per week, push a little bit more food away and less time spent on the couch. They're not doing those things, yet they're constantly searching for what's the next best thing, what's the next best thing. Until you're doing those things there, you shouldn't really even be looking for how to optimize each part of that process. Yeah. So, we could say, okay, you know what, there's better forms of cardio than walking. All right. I could argue that because walking is great. You go for a brisk walk or some hiking or some rocking or whatever. It's absolutely brilliant. It keeps you kind of in that zone 2 cardio. It's super great for your joints, really great for your lower back, and it keeps you in that cardio zone. But someone else might be arguing, oh well, an elliptical's better, the stairmaster's better, that's better. But they're not actually even doing that first thing to start off with. The same as the person that says, "Oh, you should be lifting. If you're training 3 days per week, you should be doing a full body training split or whatever." Yet they're not training 3 days per week. Rather than arguing about what the best training split is for 3 days per week, they should just lift 3 days a week. Don't argue it until you're lifting 3 days a week. Don't start arguing that. Obviously for the elite physique athlete or people that are the next level that are already doing that, sure, we can argue about what's optimal, and that's obviously largely what I do. But it's mad that if you think about it, going back to your point, all you need to be doing is just those really, really basic things, ticking those boxes every week, and you will be in better shape than 95% of people. Or at least in a few months' time, you'll be looking in the mirror and be like, you know what, I look pretty darn good right now. But there's just something up there that doesn't allow people to be able to tick those boxes. And I just sometimes think that social media doesn't help because you're constantly searching for what's better, what's better, what's better. Or there might be something else just mentally that's holding that person back. There are a lot of people that are just really great with excuses, for example. But yeah, it's so basic if you think about it for most people.
Yeah. It's funny. I was actually talking about something yesterday with somebody, and you just mentioned like the most basic things, but and then so we have people who understand like here's the things we need to do. Like if you really put somebody under, I don't want to say put a gun to their head because that might not be great for the algorithm, but if you really put somebody under pressure and said, how do you get healthy? Give me one paragraph on how you get healthy. Like I would be willing to bet that the majority of people would know what to do. Unfortunately, I don't know if repetition is the problem. Like with education, we're not hearing it enough. It's not being given to us enough, whether that's via school, whether that's whatever, public service announcements on TV or the radio or whatever. Like, I don't know, because people in general know what to do. They might not know the exact things that me and you know, but they know what to do. It's just a weird thing that it's not, it's just like not done, or it's not maybe, like I'm saying, maybe it's not repeated enough, maybe people aren't hearing it enough to make it seem normal, or whatever it is. But it's just so bizarre to me that like you have this information that people generally know that it makes them healthier, it makes them feel better, makes them live longer, but then there's people are in general still not doing it. To me, that's just such a bizarre human characteristic.
I I think as well, it's for a lot of people, it's overcoming that inertia. It's, if they're not doing anything right now, the hardest thing is for them to start doing something, tomorrow or today. And some of the one of the hardest thing, and I completely get it. I don't know about you, but if I go to a gym I don't know much about, there's a little bit of anxiety before you set foot in that door because you don't understand the layout of that gym. Just little things. There's a little bit of anxiety. So people like you and I that know that our life kind of revolves around gyms and the fitness industry. Imagine someone that hasn't been to a gym ever in their life or hasn't been to one in the last 5 to 10 years or something. There's a heck of a lot of anxiety before they even set foot in the door. So, they've got to overcome that inertia to get off the couch to start off with, or just make that first step initially. And then they've actually got to set their foot in that door, and as soon as they do, automatically they're thinking, what does that person think of me? Everyone's looking at me on whatever. So I can see kind of some barriers to entry for gyms. And I think as well, I know I keep going back to it, but social media doesn't help that either, because let's be honest, everyone posting on social media about their exercise is someone that's at an okay level anyway. They've been doing it for a while. They're probably in okay or above average shape. You look at more influencer type people, obviously they're in much better shape. They're always wearing nice outfits. So your average person that's just looking just to get back to the gym or start the gym is looking at that thinking that that's how everyone else in the gym's going to look. Everyone's going to be, in good shape. Everyone's going to be dressed nice. And there's me, I was just with a friend earlier who's a physical therapist, really, really good friend of mine. And he was talking about, he's a little bit out of shape at the moment, but he feels as though he needs to get in better shape to start going back to the gym. So, how does that make sense? You need to get in better shape before you go to the gym. But people think like that. People think they almost don't deserve to start the gym until they're at a certain level, in a certain shape. Whereas the reality is, well, that's where it happens. The sooner you can set foot in the gym or wherever you're going to go, you can train outdoors. It doesn't matter. As soon as you start doing that stuff and immerse yourself in that environment, the sooner you can start making change. You can be motivated by the other people you see. You can form a community within that gym as well, that support system within the gym or wherever you're going, whatever fitness class as well. And that's one of the biggest things you can do. But I just find it mad how people always go back down to, I'm not quite ready for the gym yet. I just need to get myself a little bit fitter. It's like, okay, fine. We all get a little bit of gym anxiety. Obviously I worked in multiple gyms for years and years and years, but from 5 a.m. in the morning until 9 p.m. at night for years and years, and obviously train them myself nowadays and see clients there and things like that. But you still get that anxiety, a little bit of anxiety every time you set foot in the gym, even if it's your own gym. There's just that little bit there, and I don't know whether that's also partly because of a bit of it's like a fight or flight thing. Your body's almost getting ready for a workout. There's that little shot of adrenaline because you're about to put some effort into something, but still there's always going to be that's something there. But you get used to it and you use it to kind of spur you on a little bit. It's either that or it's the overdosing on the pre-workout that's causing that. But
that could have a
something's happening.
Could have a big impact on it.
Something's happening.
This podcast is sponsored by Smoking Gun Coffee, a veteran-owned coffee company that strives to give back to those in need. Don't forget to use code TWR10 for a 10% discount at checkout. If you're tired of searching for a coach or trainer, somebody who knows what they're talking about and has experience, make sure you go check out the new Coach's Corner on weightroompodcast.com. You can find quality, qualified coaches to help you achieve your goals, whether that's in bodybuilding or just general fitness. Stop wasting time and start achieving your goals today. The link to the Coach's Corner is down in the description below. Oh, man. So talking about some of your physique, some of your bodybuilding clients, what is your, go into a little bit about what your full role is with them.
A lot of my role is kind of filling the gap where I believe prep coaches, that they tend to call themselves, don't tend to do that well in. So when it comes, if we're just talking about a physique competitor, they'll tend to have a prep coach. Now, a prep coach will mostly deal with their macronutrients, tell them how much to eat each week, tell them what they're going to be tracking on MyFitnessPal, give them some numbers basically, tell them how much cardio they should be doing, and then if they are an enhanced bodybuilder, then tell them what supplements, peds that they're going to be taking and manipulate that kind of thing. Now, although I can do the prep route, and I have prepped athletes for competitions fully and done everything, my role largely is on the training side. What I find from prep coaches is that they can be great at those manipulations. They're the people you want on your side for, say, 12 weeks of prep before a competition, but they're not the people that you want to be using outside of that and in the off season, especially to actually be making the improvements, for the next season. They're not the people necessarily that you're going to be going to for your training advice, because I'll be honest, and this is just my opinion, they're not great trainers. A lot of them, they're just not. You tend to get a lot of cookie cutter programs from prep coaches and things like that. So my side really is really focusing on the training side and optimizing their training. And actually, I'm the guy in your corner that you want when you want to be making a big improvements in the off season. So the next year, you've got, your glutes are a little bit bigger or whatever you want with them. Your hamstrings are looking a little bit tighter and more striated. Your abs have really come out this year. Your shoulders have really popped, whatever, because of the training that you've actually done rather than how you've peaked because of what your macronutrient split has been and how hard you've dieted and how much cardio you've been doing and things like that. So as I said, I do cover that side of things for some people, but my forte is, I'm the training guy. Really, I'm the guy you want in your corner if you want to take your training to the next level. And that's because that's what I enjoy. But also it's because I think, with competitors, it's a massive gap there that I do think they can be, they can be making, bigger than those 1% improvements. If every prep coach out there is giving 20, 30, 40 of their athletes the exact same training program, and you might even be competing against someone else that prep coach is also using, and you're doing the exact same thing. Well, it might be me that you look at to maybe, make one part of that, just that extra little bit better, so you can compete and dominate that other athlete that they might also be working with. So that's kind of where I fit in with things. Obviously I train, as I said, a lot of people that on the front cover of magazines, and people that just want to look great naked. And for those people, it's less about the peaking of things and water manipulation and things like that, and just more about making sure that they're lifting, doing the right things, making improvements there. But then on the nutrition side, we're tracking macronutrients. We're eating a certain way. But you know what? It doesn't quite matter if we're not hitting, within 10% of that margin. There's a little bit more margin for error in those people because we're not looking to peak for those people as well. So that's kind of my role with things. And as I said, just massively kind of filling those gaps in the competition world where I think there are a lot of 1%ers extra that could be had.
Yeah. To me, it's interesting from talking to so many bodybuilders. I think actually I looked the other day, I met like 100 bodybuilders I've talked to on the podcast, from people who've done one show to people who have competed at the Olympia for, almost 10 times. So it's a very diverse group of bodybuilders, but even just bodybuilders in general, bodybuilders are that 1 or whatever 5%, population. So it's a very small, it's a very much a niche group of people. But what I found is it's not necessarily the 1 or the 5% of intelligent coaches that are always dealing with these people, just based on what they have said. How much pushback do you have from prep coaches just in general? Because of maybe not wanting they might think, oh, I'm going to lose this client if they
Yeah.
work with you.
Yeah, it's you know what, I've never really had much of an issue with it. I have had occasions where, um, and I won't mention any names because obviously it would put them in a difficult situation. I've had some very, very high level athletes reach out to me and be like, okay, can you train me? Can you do can you do the training side of things for me whilst I continue to work with such and such very well known prep coach? And I've been like, yeah, look, let's jump on a Zoom call, let's have a chat. We've gone through that process, but we've got to the end of that process, and what's important anyway is that they then relay that back to their prep coach so that everyone can, at the end of the day, I just say it's a team. Okay. We should all be as part of this team to get you, the athlete, in the best possible place we can. Okay. Everything is for the better good of you. That athlete will then go back to the prep coach and then say, like, okay, I've now got someone else to do my training. Is that okay with you? I have had, I'd say, probably 70 to 90% of the time, that prep coach then turn around and be like, is it something I'm doing wrong? You know what, I'd rather just us work together, and stay kind of on track. So I know everything that you're doing. If you try to do someone else's training, then ours might go off track and things like that. And then that athlete then turn around to me and be like, you know what, such and such a person has said, for now it'd just be best just to stick with them and do all the training and so on. But then that athlete then just goes back to doing that same cookie cutter program that 30 other of that person's athletes are doing. And they know it. They know it's a cookie cutter program because you know, all the athletes talk. They see they see what each other are doing and posting on social media. They know it's the exact same. And you look at a lot of my athletes, and they'll post on social media, and you can see the athletes that I train because I am biased to certain exercises, and a lot of them will be using similar exercises, but they're not using the same training program. So I have had a lot of pushback on that front. But I think, look, as I said, for me, it's just about being as part of a team to get that athlete to be in the best possible place they can, to be competing at the highest level, to be winning pro shows and get to that highest level. It's not about, if I was, let's say it the other way around, if I was doing someone's nutrition and doing some of their prep work, and they turned around to me and said, you know what, I might just employ this person to do my prep work. Can you continue to do my own training? I'd be like, yeah, okay, yeah, no problem. Just keep me updated. Let me know what you're doing with them. Even if you just take a quick screenshot of the cardio that they've got you doing, the macronutrient split, whatever that they've got you on, so I know my end and we can work as a team, then I'm absolutely fine with that because, as I said, we're all working towards that common goal and it works nicely as a team. Shalace is a good example of that. She has a prep coach. He is brilliant. There's a good relationship there. He's done a really great job. He has some other really great athletes as well. And that works nicely. I don't need to chat with him because Shalace kind of works as the middleman. If he's told her to do something, she will just tell me, okay, you know what? He's told me to do this week, and just so you know, and it just works really nicely as kind of a team there, and that's why she's managed. In the last few years we've been working together, she's gone from no, she had a pro card before I knew her, but she's gone from no pro wins to pro win and two Olympias. And all she's done within that time really is, we've changed the training around. We've kind of taken the training to the next level. She's taken her physique to the next level within that time frame. And from prep coach perspective, he's probably got more time to understand her body. And the more time you get to understand someone's body and how you peak and just those, how your body changes the last minute, the more you understand that person and know exactly what to do if someone's holding a little bit of water or whatever, what things to change. So we've made a lot of improvements just in the past couple of years, just because we're working well as a team. And I think that's all it should be in bodybuilding, rather than I'm just part of this team, or I'm this prep coach, and I don't want anyone else being part of this. It's almost a selfish thing to a degree, because you're not thinking about that athlete.
Right. Yeah, and you mentioned right there, it's something that I think is important to keep in mind, whether you're in bodybuilding and you're trying to make changes, or whether you're just the average Joe who wants to make changes and make them last. Is, time is the biggest, I think, the biggest factor. If you're willing to stick with whatever it is, longer than, if you're a competitor, longer than the other person, maybe, or more intensely than the other person, but just in general, the longer period of time, then you're going to see those changes, and you're going to see, if you're not necessarily a bodybuilder, you're going to see those changes last as well. I think that's one of the things, is like, how do you take somebody from, okay, I'm leading this person, and, even though they're doing it, how can they, um, how does it then turn into like their accountability is on them, and they are the ones that are like, okay, I don't need anybody else telling me to get out of bed anymore. I'm good to go. I can motivate myself to get to the gym now. I think that's where, if we can get more people there, I think that's where the sustainability comes.
Yeah, and I think there are some great people in the health and fitness industry that do a really great job of that. They're not, as I said, they're not the type of people I work with. The type of people I mostly work with are, a lot of, I suppose, even what I would call my average Joes, my non-competitors, are personal trainers themselves, are in the industry, and let's be honest, they know how to train. They can probably do it pretty well, but they want to turn up to the gym, know exactly what they're doing, to be told what to do. They don't want to almost take their work with them to the gym. They don't want to be over analyzing what they're doing, questioning every single set rep, whether they're doing the right exercise for them. And they want to put their trust in someone like me to lay out that complete system for them to follow, and to know that they're on track and going to hit a target at the end of the day. So they're on a slightly different level. But as I said, there are some great people in the industry that are taking that, that person that hasn't been to the gym in years, or has never been to the gym, to, I suppose, to within that, top 50 percentile or whatever, of the average gym population, just simply by providing some kind of motivation and encouragement, almost like more of an accountability coach than an actual, I suppose, a science of sets, reps, exercise, biomechanics kind of person. They're very much on the accountability side, and just a really great job of getting that person to kind of that level, really. As I say, it's not really kind of an area that I personally excel at. As I said, I'm not the type of coach. I'll be honest, I'm not the type of coach that will handhold. I'm not that person, but there are some really great coaches out there that are good handholders, but just not quite as good on that biomechanics, sciencey
Right.
kind of route. They're not looking for the one percenters. They're just looking to get you to just get there, and just hit some initial milestones, and just get some early wins in.
Yeah. I think as a coach, it's important to know what your strengths are too. Like you said, you're not somebody who that's interesting to you. You're not somebody
Yeah,
who wants to kind of hold their hand, as you say. And other people, that's like, that's a big part of what motivates them to be a coach, is that
yeah,
aspect. And then like working almost as like an assembly line, like, hey, get this person to this level, and then they get sent on to this next coach, and then they get sent on
exactly.
to you, and then if they want to be, if they want to take it to the bodybuilding aspect, they get
Yeah,
sent on maybe to this prep coach. And
yeah,
so I think if we can all kind of like know our roles and know what we're, because it's not necessarily even just what we're good at, it's also what we enjoy. So if we can all
yeah,
like mesh those two together, we can really streamline people down the line of fitness.
completely. And I think there are a lot of coaches that, go down that route of, I suppose, selfishly, thinking that, they need to kind of try and pick up every single client, and, or no, let's put it another way. They like to put down other coaches because that other coach might not see their viewpoint. Whereas the reality is, or another exercise, they might see a coach do a certain exercise and be like, oh, yeah, what? Okay, you might be going in the gym, you might see a personal trainer working with someone and doing this certain exercise. You might be looking over and be like, what? Why are they doing that exercise? Or doing that exercise in that order doesn't make sense. The reality is you don't know that client. You don't know that trainer. You don't know that client. Now, let's say they're doing that exercise with great technique. Well, as coaches, we can't really question that exercise being prescribed for that unless it's like horrific exercise. Like if you're 50 pounds overweight or if that person's 50 pounds overweight and they're being prescribed burpees, then yeah, we've probably got a right to question it. But even then, you could be like, you know what? That personal trainer might have prescribed that person as that they might hate burpees, that trainer, but they might have prescribed burpees to that client because that client has actually asked to do burpees and they enjoy doing burpees, or they want to get better at burpees, or they're doing a burpee competition next week or whatever, or their friend says, they can do 20 burpees and they want to be able to do 20 burpees, whatever. You can't really question that other trainer's approach unless you know enough about that client. So, you see the kind of the online space, there's a lot of kind of beating up other trainers and putting other trainers down about their techniques and methods and exercises that they use. You don't know the point of view that they're coming across from. You don't know the types of athletes that they work with either. There are a lot of coaches I see that really put down certain coaches' methods. Yet that coach themselves has only ever worked with, say, super elite powerlifters ever in their life. Well, you try applying your methods to that person that's 40, 50 pounds overweight, they're just not going to work. But going back to your point, there is a time and a place for what coaches do. It's almost like kind of a system of you might go to you for you, and then you next, and then you next. Or if you want to specialize in that, you go to that. If you want to specialize in that, you go to that. But as coaches, we just seem to think we're a lot of us, we're great at everything, no matter what, come to us. It's a little bit like CrossFit. If you want to get in great shape, do CrossFit. If you want to get faster, do CrossFit. You want to get more muscular, do CrossFit. It's apparently the solution for everything. Where coaches, I think, kind of have that same thought about ourselves. Whereas the reality is, we are great at certain things. We're not great at other things.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely knowing your role. And then also, like you said, I think an important thing to mention is the idea that it's okay to be on a team and to refer people out. Like, you don't have to be the physical therapist. You don't have to be the massage therapist. You don't have to be the, all these other
and that's
things.
a common one, isn't it? That as a person working as a personal trainer or coach, constantly there's always someone, my wrist hurts a little bit. What do you think it is? And we automatically, within our own heads, want to come up with an answer for them. Where, the boring answer is, or the answer they don't really want to hear is, sorry, I don't know the answer. I can't really give you an answer. You need to go and see a good manual therapist, good physical therapist to get checked out, whatever. You don't want to give that I don't know answer, because it's almost like pawning them off to someone else. You feel as though you need to try and give them an answer. And I think some coaches take it to another level in that they go outside of their scope of practice and might, grab that person's wrist and have a look and move it around and be like, oh, it could be this, it could be this, it could be this. Whereas the reality is that's not going to be doing them any good. They need to be going to see a specialist to actually get an answer. And it's being secure in yourself as well, just knowing that you can refer out. There are people better than you in certain roles. You're not a jack of all trades.
Yeah, definitely. And I think if you understand that, you can focus more on spending time and learning about the things that you should be, teaching people. Like if you're trying to spend more time as a personal trainer learning things about physical therapy, well, you're probably not learning the best ways on how to do this exercise, or like,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? Like, you just have more time and spend more time on the things that you do and that you should be doing.
Yeah. And just from a marketing standpoint as well, just be really good at a very, very specific thing. And you'll never have to market yourself because you will be seen as the person that's good at doing that rather than the person that's just does a bit of everything, don't know what they do, and you're competing against everyone else. You're much better at just, super specializing in one thing or being known for that one thing, because then you are the go-to person in that area.
Yeah, that's really good advice as far as, marketing does go. I never actually thought about it from the perspective of you're competing against everybody if you're trying to do everything, but that's very true. Then you don't really stand out. You're on this list, but you're far down, and it's like, yeah, that's a really good way to put it, I think.
Absolutely. You're always going to be far down on every single list because that's how you've taught yourself. You're learning a little bit from every single discipline versus specializing in one thing, two things, whatever, and being at the top of one list, rather than spreading yourselves down multiple lists.
Yeah. Really appreciate you coming on the podcast. It was a really good conversation, kind of a little bit about, marketing, about coaching,
Everything.
yeah, it was a really, I think, kind of a diverse group of topics, but I think something very valuable that both athletes and coaches can benefit from.
100%. No, it's been a good conversation. As I say, we've covered a bunch of different topics here, so hopefully people get a lot of value out of it, and find the answer that they're looking for.
Certainly. And before we head out, if you want to share your socials or anything like that, you can go ahead and do that.
Yeah, so my home really is my website, thefitnessmaverick.com. That's got absolutely everything on it. Social media is really just a way for me to kind of promote myself in other areas, and kind of get people through to my website where they can get the long form content, the good videos, the big stuff. If you want to consume my short form content, 60-second videos, things like that, then Instagram at the Fitness Maverick, Facebook at the Fitness Maverick, pretty much the Fitness Maverick everywhere. You want to find me on LinkedIn, you can even find me on LinkedIn.
If you're tired of searching for a coach or trainer, somebody who knows what they're talking about and has experience, make sure you go check out the new Coach's Corner on weightroompodcast.com. You can find quality, qualified coaches to help you achieve your goals, whether that's in bodybuilding or just general fitness. Stop wasting time and start achieving your goals today. The link to the Coach's Corner is down in the description below.